So in the background of the Marvel Universe, we've got Godzilla going from one world to the next, smacking everybody, until he arrived in one universe where he met a Doctor Doom who was like, hey, that's enough of that. And if you're asking like, dope, why is this happening? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Godzilla's the only one brave enough to go up against GTA 6 and Avengers Doomsday, because he's got a game and a movie dropping at the end of the year. And I mean, there's a bit of room between the dates, but still, Godzilla's like, hey, y'all finna watch and play both. So with that said, if you guys enjoy these videos, drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications. Alright, so this story is the direct continuation of Godzilla Destroys the Marvel Universe, which is not to be confused with the Godzilla vs. Marvel stories that we covered, because that was something totally separate. And really, from what I'm seeing so far, Infinity War just could have been a continuation, as opposed to being its own thing, but here we are. But nonetheless, just as a really quick recap as far as where the last story left off and where this one's picking up, at the end of the last story we saw, after many attempts of trying to defeat Godzilla, the heroes were like, you know what, we're just gonna throw him out there on the backside of space, which is where Noel then found Godzilla and was like, you know what, I think we're both after the same thing. Just based on how much destruction Godzilla has caused, and Noel wanting to get rid of all life and light in the universe, so he could return it back to the peaceful abyss that it once was, because he likes it dark. But now when we come back and some time has passed, we end up finding out what has happened since then, when we see the Galactic Senate going off because the heroes of Earth have now made Godzilla everyone's problem. And this goes through stages, because at first everyone agrees that Earth is awful, and I mean there's not much to argue about that. And you have some people here suggesting an attack on Earth since their homeworld was destroyed by Godzilla, but that idea is shot down because attacking Earth has always led to disastrous consequences. But then this leads to a bit of an update, when one of the Skrull senators mentioned that their problem is much worse than just Godzilla, and how this isn't just one problem, but it's two. Because he says here it's not just that terrifying god named Zilla, but it's the full might of the symbiote race, powered by none other than the evil god Noel. Entire worlds are falling, first to the kaiju, and then the defeated are assimilated by symbiotes. They have so far laid waste to several star systems already, and the creature seems to be carving a path right toward, and as he's saying this, we see Godzilla in this huge orb, being transported by Noel's Grendels. Just before we zoom in to Noel, who finishes his sentence, when Noel gives the order for his symbiotes to deploy Godzilla on the intergalactic empire of Wakanda, which in this universe is very similar to any of the other ones we've seen, though it's about to have a lot more in common with the intergalactic empire we saw in Alien vs. Avengers. But now this continues saying Burning T'Challa is the capital city of the intergalactic empire of Wakanda. Long before T'Challa became the Black Panther of Earth, Wakandans established dominion out in the stars. Today, the empire's greatest threat arrives, which of course is Godzilla. But alongside of this, we're also given an explanation to why Noel's targeting the intergalactic empire of Wakanda. And it mainly focuses on Godzilla's beef with Black Panther, and we'll talk more about where that comes from in a moment. But when I first read this and I saw that Noel chose this location as his first target, this had me thinking like, man, is it possible that at one point in this universe, T'Challa used the hand of Bast on Noel and whooped Noel so bad that it had him like, hey, I need my lick back? Because if this was incorporated in some kind of way, much like what we saw in the Black Panther King in Black one-shot, I think it would have made for a nice build-up. Because in the main Marvel universe, this one-shot was focused on showing us Wakanda's solution to pushing Noel's Grendels and symbiotes out of Wakanda by using the Hand of Bast, which is built to kill the Phoenix. And it was great for what it was in the one-shot, but had this been a bigger deal in an alternate universe, then it would have been crazy to see. And it would have given Godzilla and Noel a common enemy. Because from what we're told as far as the main reason why Noel sent Godzilla to the Wakandan Empire, this basically just goes back to their agreement, with Noel seeing this as a way to give Godzilla what he wants, since the Black Panther led the battle that removed Godzilla from Earth. And again, Noel can't control Godzilla. So in a way, Noel's like, okay, I'm gonna give him what he wants and hopefully he'll help me get what I want. Because Noel's trying to get rid of everybody anyway. And at one point it even says here that the King of Monsters will forever hate Black Panther after T'Challa led his ostracism from Earth. So yeah, for Godzilla this is personal. And what ends up happening here, while Godzilla's wrecking the place and Noel's symbiotes are bonding to the Wakandans, we then see a ship fly through. And it's done in a way where it's like, oh, this is the person who's gonna save everybody. And no, it's not Black Panther, but instead, it's Black Bolt, King of the Inhumans, Mr. Blackagar Boltagon himself. And I've always felt like Black Bolt's had one of them names where it's like, oh, you read this on a sheet of paper? You're like, yeah, this is a black guy. Nope. And when he gets there, the plan is for him to say something to Godzilla, anything. while the rest of the Wakandans continue to evacuate. And as Black Bolt approaches Godzilla, this starts to play out like your classic Western standoff, starting with Godzilla doing his iconic roar, followed by Black Bolt's tuning fork lighting up so he can focus the power of his next 4 words, as he breathes deep and tells Godzilla, "Cute roar. Now, die." And as expected, this attack knocks the scales off of Godzilla, just going through what was said to be the king of monsters' impenetrable armor. And that was kind of funny, though I'm not sure if it was meant to be. But after Black Bolt does this, he does the really cool walk away, because now Godzilla's laid out and all the Wakandans are celebrating. But as soon as Godzilla starts growling, Black Bolt's slow and confident walk suddenly turns into a full-out sprint. And at no point did he even bother to look back, he just took off. And for good reason, because not only is Godzilla back up, with his healing factor being ridiculous, much like we saw in the series leading up to this, but now Godzilla is so pissed, to the point where he's just leveling the intergalactic empire, making Null's job from here just easy, like an alley-oop, because Null just sends in the symbiotes and they take everyone. And this goes on saying, for the first time in their history, the Wakandans fell easily. The hostile takeover of the entire universe was progressing with frightening speed. And the next time we see Black Bolt, he's basically on a t-shirt. So back at the Galactic Senate, after the Wakandans have fallen and Black Bolt's gone, these guys are all like, what chance do we have? And one of these dudes is like, one of the Skrulls is like, hey, can we at least destroy Earth before Godzilla kills us all? But then the point is made that if Godzilla and Null stay on their trajectory, they're already heading for Earth. And everybody starts clapping when they hear that. But that quickly changes once they all hear someone say, attention, this is Captain America of Earth. And that's where all the clapping and cheering turns into boo. So Cap goes on by saying, understandable. Earth understands that Godzilla has not been neutralized as we'd hoped, and we are racing to meet the crisis. The Avengers are en route, the X-Men are rushing to reinforce the Shi'ar, and the Fantastic Four are recruiting powerful allies to our cause. The Guardians of the Galaxy have a plan to try and separate the kaiju from Null. We will defeat Godzilla. And Spider-Man's over on the side like, or not. But now this brings in Vision, Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, Blue Marvel, Captain Marvel, Wasp, She-Hulk, Ant-Man, and Black Panther. And along the way, Spider-Man catches a piece of a conversation that's going on between Vision, Iron Man, and Blue Marvel, where they're all talking about the solution to the Godzilla problem. And all Peter hears is Vision saying that he reviewed the proposal and that he finds it deeply flawed, both scientifically and ethically. And when Tony asks Adam what does he think, even Blue Marvel's like he's struggling to offer an alternative. And even though Spider-Man didn't catch the whole conversation, his spider sense is letting him know that wherever this is heading, it ain't good. And this is where Blue Marvel brings up how Forge and the X-Men once built a black hole gun, and the singularity would only exist for a fraction of a second, and how he believes that would surely be enough to kill the kaiju. So Peter tells him, don't we have enough problems right now without adding black holes? Am I the only one who's seen Interstellar? Matt Damon would kill us all. And what's funny is I recently saw some people arguing on Reddit on whether or not Matt Damon was in Interstellar, which was funny to see. But then it's here where the Guardians reach out saying that they've engaged the enemy, because now they're taking the fight directly to Null's ship. And as part of their plan, Rocket has upgraded Nebula's cybernetics and fitted her with a neural shocker so she could use it on Null as part of their big play. But once they board Null's ship, things don't quite play out that way, because Null just wrecks these guys, and as it turns out, he's a lot tougher than what they expected. And now this fight leads to the Guardians finding the creature called the Godworm that Null's expecting to use down the line. And the whole Godworm thing makes sense when you think about Null's history with dragons and the possibility of this being connected to the worm like the Elder God. But none of this goes that deep. This is just Null's plot device. And when Null tells him that the Godworm is how he's going to bring peace and quiet to life's absurd cacophony, Star-Lord's basically like, okay, cool, then that's what we need to destroy. Only for Null to stop him before he can even get a shot. So Star-Lord reaches out to Rocket and he's like, hey, Null's got something on board that we really don't want him to keep. Because really, when it comes to Null and his plans for the Godworm, since he can't control Godzilla, Null plans for his will to be done in the death that Godzilla leaves behind. And he's saying this to the Guardians without going into too much detail, but this moment creates an opportunity for Nebula to hit him with a neural shock, which instead shows her what Null has planned. Because right away she sees a vision of Odin dead and Null standing at the World Tree with the Godworm all over it. But this vision is interrupted when Null breaks Nebula's arm. He's like, okay, enough with the spoilers. And then when we go back to Rocket, who's trying to get to them, he's just overwhelmed by symbiotes when they attack the Milano. Then we're told here the Guardian ship decompressed, and the void of space swallowed Rocket's screams. There was one soul who could hear the battle. At that moment in Asgard, Odin, the Allfather, rested under Yggdrasil, the World Tree. So Odin takes another swig of mead before preparing Asgard for what's to come. As he says here, hear me, Asgard, and raise the banners of war. We must prepare for a battle against the behemoth, though it not be Surtur. it will surely be a match. So make ready to defend the realms. This conflict cares not if we want it. Godzilla shall be upon us. Make ready. And I'm not sure if it's the angle here, but this look at Asgard, it kind of reminds me of the map from Ultimate Alliance 3. Fingers crossed we get a part 4 sometime soon. And now after this, when we go to the Fantastic Four, who are currently in deep space, making their way to see an old friend and ask for a favor. But as they approach, there's a moment here where Sue tells Reed, like, okay, I know we've made a terrible miscalculation. And she asks him, like, hey, are you sure this isn't us getting ready to make another? And Reed just tells her, like, hey, we're preparing for multiple eventualities that we're hoping not to deploy. And this one's better than Tony's mini singularity, which right there goes back to parts of the conversation that Spider-Man missed earlier, when Tony, Vision, and Blue Marvel were just tossing around insanely dangerous ideas. But at this time with the Fantastic Four, we discover that they've made their way out here to ask Galactus for help. And right away, Galactus is like, yeah, I've seen what's going on out there. And at first, he basically tells them, like, why is that my problem? But Reed and Johnny make the very valid point of telling Galactus that Godzilla's out there destroying worlds. Lots of delicious worlds. So that's where they pitched the idea, like, hey, so maybe you want to try eating a lizard? I understand they're a delicacy on some worlds. So yeah, now this has set things up for both Galactus and Odin to take the fight to Godzilla. Alright, so the first thing we do is pick up with a really quick recap, with it saying Godzilla long held dominion over Earth, and now it rages across the universe. In the monster's wake, the god of symbiotes conquered anyone lucky enough to survive being stomped or burned. The Guardians of the Galaxy and the Galactic Empire of Wakanda have been devastated, and the Fantastic Four and Galactus have set aside their differences to face the threat. Meanwhile, Null has continued to usher Godzilla through a campaign of destruction as the Kaiju's path back to Earth carves through the Shi'ar Empire and brings it face to face with Chandelar's powerful Magister, Gladiator. And right now, Gladiator's just trying to fight off Godzilla to buy everyone else enough time to evacuate. And it's one of those things where he just had to jump in and fight right away. Like, he didn't have enough time to wait for the Imperial Guard, he just had to get busy. And when he tries to call for them, because this is the kind of threat a group of super guardians should be taken care of, Godzilla just smacks him with that tail, and your boy is out of here. And at this point, we're given a quick reminder as far as why Godzilla is so angry. Which again goes back to the previous story, Godzilla Destroys the Marvel Universe, when Godzilla was ostracized by the heroes of Earth and sent into space, which is of course what led to Godzilla being everyone else's problem. But because Godzilla belongs on Earth, he's ready to get back there and reclaim his throne, so to speak. While on the other hand, you have Noel, who's taken notice of Godzilla's power. So he's just decided to use Godzilla's wrath as a way to further his own agenda. And we've seen parts of that plan come together already, because when Noel found Godzilla, he was like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna take you back to Earth, but along the way, I'm gonna drop you off at a few places so you can bring devastation, and after that, I'll drop symbiotes on the survivors who are left behind. So to be clear, that's what's happening on Chandelar now. So these different worlds are just stops along the way. So right here, Noah reminds Godzilla that's where they're heading. So Godzilla lets out this crazy roar, and that's where we're told the mighty roar of the kaiju is a terrible song. And far away in a distant nebula, the slumbering King Ghidorah hears it with 6 ears. Because, comic books. Because it ain't no need to get into the conversation of how sound needs some type of matter to vibrate off of to travel from one space to the other. Let alone the fact that sound travels slower than light, but we don't need to talk about that. Because before you know it, somebody's going to be like, well, then none of this is true. And I don't want to take away from the credibility, so let's continue. Because it goes on to say here, the behemoth spreads its wings and flies to defend its territory. And now King Ghidorah is quick about it, because he catches Godzilla before he can even leave Chandelar. And between the two of them, the fight goes down there. But I like how this story takes a moment to point out how in Godzilla and King Ghidorah's previous battles, it was always King Ghidorah who violated Godzilla's territory, referring to Earth. But now with this fight taking place away from Earth, Godzilla wants King Ghidorah to know that he has dominion over all. Or in other words, you can get it on any planet. And now throughout this, we see things like Empress Lilandra making the announcement that Gladiator has fallen, and everyone who can't evacuate must do so now. And I gotta say, when I first saw that, I was like, man, Gladiator deserved better. And that's just because I think Gladiator would have put up a more formidable fight. But nonetheless, getting back to Godzilla and King Ghidorah, within this matchup, there are a few things going on at the same time. Because for King Ghidorah, this is more so about just destroying Godzilla, because they're all about destruction and the enjoyment of said destruction, so there's nothing too different in that case. But for Godzilla, aside from this being him proving a point, as far as being the king of monsters on an intergalactic scale, a little something extra happens here after King Ghidorah hits Godzilla with their bioelectric blast, because after Godzilla counters, and the two of them get back to fighting again, Godzilla notices not only did King Ghidorah's attack weaken the symbiote that is on Godzilla, which isn't controlling Godzilla, because Noel can't control him, but Godzilla notices when they start fighting again, the symbiote that's on him, it tries to spread over to King Ghidorah. And when he notices that, he goes for the kill, which is really just him taking advantage of his current advantage by having a symbiote to kill a long-time enemy that he would have struggled with had it been any other circumstances. Because straight up and down, Godzilla did not want King Ghidorah to get that symbiote upgrade and get anywhere close to how powerful he is now. And when this happens, we're told there's always a bigger monster. You know, like there's always a bigger fish. As we see the Fantastic Four make their way here. And now in the last issue, we saw who the Fantastic Four had went to for help. And well, now we find out that that person said yes. And that person, of course, was none other than Galactus, who Reed convinced to come here by telling him this would be his opportunity to be the Lifebringer again. And now we're not told if whether in this universe things played out how they did, like in Al Ewing's Ultimates, or if there's any unique history or build-up going on here. But rather, what we are told a couple times throughout this is that this would be Galactus saving billions of lives and effectively saving worlds that he could consume later. But nonetheless, when things get cracking and Godzilla hits Galactus with that atomic breath, for a moment here Galactus is like remarkable, which I imagine also means like, oh yeah, that hurt. Because right away he's forced to acknowledge Godzilla's power. So that's where Galactus grabs Godzilla by the neck, just as the King of Monsters is getting ready to hit that iconic roar. And as Galactus gets ready to feed, he says here, "Silence, there is but one world devourer, and by slaying this false god, I bring life to the galaxy." So yeah, just like that, Galactus has eaten Godzilla. And this is generally done in the same way that Galactus would have consumed a world, by doing some sort of elemental conversion, either by himself or with a machine, and break it down to a cellular level. And now usually we would see this be done with Galactus using an elemental converter so he could consume the world as pure energy. But in this case he did it himself and he consumed Godzilla on a cellular level. And now as soon as this is done, Reed basically says here, like yeah, Galactus is bringing life, ultimately so he can deliver more death. Because yeah, he might have saved worlds, but eventually he will hunger again and try to eat some of those worlds that he just saved. And then also Reed says here, once more, my mind is fate's fulcrum. You know, essentially blaming himself for the unpleasant outcome of any of his plans, which in this case would be the death and consumption of an insanely terrifying and powerful creature. So of course, Ben and Sue try to tell Reed don't even trip because it was Godzilla. But then before you know it, something terrible starts to happen because Galactus, he starts to cough up a little something. And that's where Reed's like, oh no, Galactus only devoured Godzilla down to a cellular level. It's reconstructing. And right there, Ben's like, that don't sound good. And when Galactus asks how long, Reed tells him seconds. It's right there where Galactus grabs his chest like, no, something ain't right. Before screaming at Reed, what have we done? And I mean, at this point, truth be told, what's done is done. Because now Galactus is feeling the pain like no other as his chest gets to pounding. And before you know it, within a matter of seconds, Godzilla bursts out of the chest of Galactus like something out of an alien movie. Pure horror. Godzilla, king of the chest bursters. And the Fantastic Four, they got front row seats as they're watching this happen. And the expressions on their faces, that of pure terror. And I can only imagine seeing something like this, you're too scared to scream, any of that. Because your brain's still trying to figure out what's the scariest thing here. Because aside from Godzilla reconstructing from a cellular level, he is now insanely charged up with the power cosmic. And that's where Sue is just like, Ben, get us out of here yesterday. And Ben's basically like, say less. And I'm talking about stand up in the motor, bust the dashboard, they out of there. And it's a good thing they left as fast as they did. Because when they leave, Godzilla lets off a blast so crazy that, you know, saying it devastated Chandelar would do it no justice. With Godzilla creating a new center of gravity in this universe, which now justifies what Reed was tripping about earlier. And it's brought him to the point where with Johnny asking him what they should do next, Reed can't even decide. And he's like, everything we've done has exacerbated the problem, which is 1000% true. And this all eventually ends up gaining the attention of the Silver Surfer when he first notices that King Ghidorah is missing, only to next be held by Galactus. So he rushes on his way, noticing the shift in the balance of the cosmos. And now it's possible this could be spiraling into even more chaos, with Galactus' death causing the loss of balance, but we don't go into any of that here. Instead, we head to Asgard, where, as we saw before, Odin had already been preparing for war, with him preparing the Asgardians for battle and having everyone there who can fight get ready to fight. But given the fact that things have become way worse, now Odin's got to take things up to a whole nother level. And now, I mean, considering the fact that Noel's endgame is to basically bring a symbiote invasion to Asgard to kill Odin and then use the God Worm on Yggdrasil and go on to conquer the 10 realms. There's really no scenario where it's like Odin's doing too much to get prepared, especially when you have Null pursuing this type of plan in a Godzilla story, because it's all going to come down to fighting both. So this is what leads to Odin calling forth Midgard's mightiest heroes, which is basically most of your heavy hitters from the Avengers, the X-Men, and perhaps we'll see a handful of others down the line. But to take things a step further, not only did Odin call for the heroes of Midgard, he also called in a favor from Queen Hela, because when Odin said he need Hela help, he meant that both ways. So now this sets everything in place for Godzilla and Null to take on everyone else who's left. Because at this point, this isn't the Avengers, this is the survivors. And now I'm sure there's going to be a number of power scaling arguments in the comments, with people mentioning things like how powerful Storm is in space, like the time when her and T'Challa were taking on Galactus, when she was manipulating all sorts of hydrogen and helium and cosmic storms and what have you. I get it, did a video on it, but just keep in mind when we cover these alternate universe stories, these characters don't scale 1-to-1 with their 616 counterparts, so results may vary. And when I say that, by all means, have fun with the back and forth. But just know at the end of the day, it's a comic book. It's just comics. It's comics, okay? Alright, so right away in issue 3, this takes us over to Latveria with Dr. Doom, which kind of feels like a curveball a little bit, because you would imagine Doom would have been way more involved at this point. But up until now, he's just been watching. And from Doom's perspective, Reed, Doctor Strange, and everyone else has been fumbling this whole Godzilla situation. And of course, Doom, he puts most of this on Reed, because he's like, the fool couldn't handle a single robust lizard. So at this point, Doom's like, okay, it's time for me to get involved. So he calls for Major Domo, and I'm not sure if he's a variant of the Mojoverse guy, or if he's just literally the steward of Castle Doom, or maybe a combination of both. And that's really neither here or there. But it's here where Doom tells him to fuel the jet and prepare for his extended absence from the kingdom, because Doom needs to go to Tibet, and then from there, to space. And Doom continues here saying Galactus has been felled, and Godzilla is now more powerful than ever, imbued with the power cosmic. The creature is an apex predator of this planet. It will not stop until it has reclaimed its domain. We must assume that all attempts to stop Godzilla will fail. The monster will have its vengeance upon this planet, unless Doom intercedes. So now Doom's got to learn as much as he can, as quickly as he can, so he can find a way to stop Godzilla. Because given the position they're in now, every attack towards Godzilla has only made him stronger, so to use any of the same methods would have less effect. And now even when we find Doom heading to Tibet to learn more about Godzilla, there's no guarantee that anything that worked before will work again, because everything we've seen tried on the King of Monsters has just made him stronger. So there's a chance Doom may have to do something completely new. And now when we head back to Asgard, Heimdall lets everyone know here that he's spotted the enemy, swimming through the stars like a wave of annihilation, which you know is a pretty good description of what we just saw. But also keep in mind, from the end of the last issue heading into this, Odin called in the Avengers, the X-Men, Hela, her army, Enchantress, all to fight at his side and defend Asgard from Godzilla. So when Heimdall tells everyone that he spotted the big fella, that has Thor telling everyone else like, alright, now get ready. And now at this time when Beta Ray Bill gets here, he goes straight to Thor and he tells him, you shall face Godzilla with Beta Ray Bill and Stormbreaker. And he's like, let this foul beast try to face both our hammers. And Bill's like, better yet, let us meet Godzilla before he gets here. Like, he's ready to throw down. So Thor goes with him, but he makes sure to let Beta Ray Bill know, like, hey, do not underestimate Godzilla, Bill. It is a terrible engine of rage. And surely enough, when they get up there, Beta Ray Bill finds out that Thor wasn't playing. Because when they get to Godzilla and they strike him with both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker together for a good hit, Godzilla just turns around and looks at them more annoyed than anything else. And now Beta Ray Bill's like, those strikes should have sent it to Hela. Like, that should have been a kill shot. And now Thor's basically like, I told you this thing was serious. Now let's see if we can summon a storm large enough to finish the job. And when they do, this sends enough energy through Godzilla to power a small world. You know, the kind of power these AI companies wish they had after buying up all the DRAM, only to find out they don't have enough power to support the server racks that use it. And now my bad for getting off topic, but that's just some crazy work. But now this insane attack, it stops Godzilla for a moment, only for him to bounce right back. And when he does, Beta Ray Bill looks at Thor and he's like, how? And Thor's just like, disperse, brother, and beware its tail. And I could just see Beta Ray Bill going on like, you ain't got the answers, Thor. But I will say Thor was right about that tail, because they both end up getting smacked back down to the Rainbow Bridge, which right there lets everyone know that Godzilla's coming in hot. So Storm and Cyclops are like, yeah, it's that time. And Cyclops tells her that we need to hold the bridge and buy time for Odin to put an end to this once and for all. Just for Godzilla to come crashing down on the Rainbow Bridge, just to follow that up with his atomic breath. So Cap is like, Jean, can you stop this? And she's basically like, I will, Cap. Because if I can't, we're all dead. Then it goes on to say here, the most powerful heroes in the universe were on their heels, which is exactly how Null, the god of the symbiotes, wanted them. He followed Godzilla's trail of destruction and used the chaos to further his own dreams of conquest, which is why now we have Null bringing one of his creations, the God Worm, so it can bond with the World Tree and lead to him being the new ruler of the 10 realms. And again, that's Null's big play, because after the heroes sent Godzilla into space, Null knew this unstoppable monster was going to carve a path right back to Earth. So his plan was to latch on to that path of destruction to not only claim the worlds that were destroyed along the way, but also use this as an opportunity to nudge Godzilla along a path that would spearhead his own conquest. So now as Null is heading in, of course Heimdall spots him, so he heads that way to check it out. And now when he leaves and this jumps over to Odin for a moment, I like how we're told here that Odin's fought Godzilla before, because he mentions here how he's fought Godzilla for 1,000,000 years and he's never bested Odin yet. And since Godzilla wants to return to Earth, Odin will grant that and bury Godzilla so deep he'll never surface again, which could mean that it was Odin who buried Godzilla prior to the beginning of Godzilla Destroys the Marvel Universe, which is the story that leads into this one. But we're not told if that's exactly what Odin's talking about here, even though it sounds like it could be. But we still have more we need to find out about Godzilla's history before this story comes to a close. And now when Odin attacks, Godzilla just comes around with that tail once again. And fortunately, Jean's able to catch the people who went flying. Well, a couple of those people at least, but Odin has the others. And to Odin, this was Godzilla going after his subjects, as opposed to directly attacking him. Because like Odin said, 1,000,000 years and Godzilla still hasn't bested him. So next, Odin tells Enchantress and Hela that it's time for their magics, but Hela's like, hey, if we slay the beast, I don't claim it as my subject, which is like the underworld don't even want Godzilla. But even now we're told here, all attempts to impede the rampage were failing, and the Rainbow Bridge itself began to buckle. And meanwhile, over at the World Tree, Null's there, and he's ready to put the God Worm to use by joining it to the World Tree as a way to expand his power. And just like we saw, Heimdall followed Null, which is what led him here. So he tells Null to get away from Yggdrasil, but as soon as he sees the God Worm, Heimdall's basically like, what the heck is even that? So Null tells him here, that beautiful girl is my gift to the living world, so that the chattering masses will come under my sway, then die. Then he's like, show this Asgardian what I intend, my pretty little girl. I shall bring a glorious silence to the universe, but in the meantime, I'll be putting up with the sound of that roar. I couldn't have tamed this universe without Godzilla. And now after Heimdall gets taken, things continue to go downhill. And it doesn't seem that way at first, because when the Silver Surfer shows up, I mean, he gets smacked off of his board right off the bat. But it's pretty fire for a moment because the board shoots through Godzilla and he keeps the attack coming. But like we saw before, the Surfer was responding to Galactus. So now it's here where he says, where's Galactus? And how does this beast possess the power cosmic? How can this be? And now as he's saying this, Odin's preparing the Casket of Ancient Winters to use on Godzilla, which contains the Fimbulwinter of Ymir, as a way to just freeze Godzilla, with it having the power to freeze planets. And now this is where the Surfer realizes that Godzilla got this power from Galactus. And you guys already know how that went down, it was crazy. But right now as Godzilla's being frozen, the Surfer's gotta act quick. So he tells Godzilla, you must not retain this power. I will tolerate your screeching no more, beast. Just as he calls for his board, and he takes back the power cosmic that Godzilla took from Galactus. And now he's able to do this and call for his board before it gets trapped in the ice with Godzilla. And the combination of these things allow them to stop Godzilla for now. And when they do, the Surfer is contacted by Reed Richards, who tells him that he needs the Surfer to get where he is as fast as possible, because Reed's managed to save Galactus, but he's gonna need the power cosmic back ASAP, or it's a wrap. And Reed did this, of course, because if he lets Galactus die, then they're gonna have a whole nother crazy problem on their hands. Between the breakdown of the cosmic balance, the release of Abraxas, like I said in the last talk, Galactus' death would only escalate things. So the Surfer tells Reed that he's several galaxies away and that he'll see him in a few minutes, which right there is just a reminder of how insanely fast the Silver Surfer is. He over here like, move, physics, get out the way. He's the Dominic Toretto of the universe. And I heard Norrin's gonna be in the next Fast and Furious, but I'm not sure if that's legit. But as soon as he leaves, the part I was talking about earlier as far as things going downhill, yeah, this is where we get back to that. Because we're told here, Null's infection began to grow, and the closest to the tree felt it first. Because Null just steered Godzilla here as a distraction. And now as Norrin makes his way, he gives Reed the update, as far as letting him know that Godzilla's frozen solid, but this ain't over. So Reed, he's like, yeah, I hear that, but I just need you to get here now. And from there, Reed tells Ben, Johnny, and Sue that he wants them to reinforce Asgard, and that their best bet in the case of Godzilla is to try to find a way to make peace, because Godzilla is of Earth, and removing him has caused an imbalance of nature. Then reads like also reach out to Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom, so they can talk some things over. But as we know, the problem with that is Reed and the others have no idea as far as how bad things are in Asgard right now, and the state of everyone there, because Null's having his way. And even now he's considering his next move, because he says to Godzilla here, dominion over Earth is your birthright, Godzilla. Shall I convey you there while my symbiotes grow in the hearts of man? Or would you prefer your icy hibernation? So yeah, whoever's heading to Asgard next, hopefully they look before they leap. And now when we head back over to Doom, who's made his way to Tibet, the roof of the world, we find that he's come here to seek information from the Ancient One. And now as Doom makes his not so humble approach, he's saying things like, Doom seeks words, old man, and things like, few souls can say they have counseled Doom. And I'm just like, all right, Mr. Doctor, what's going on? But he at least acknowledges that the Ancient One is a valuable source of history, for both pre-recorded history and also some early recorded history. Now that Doom says what he's here for, he starts going through some stuff himself, and the Ancient One just tells him sometimes there's no riddle, Doom. What doesn't kill Godzilla makes it stronger. And now Doom just goes down the list like, we've hit the monster with quite a bit. Military technology, magic, and now cosmic energy. We've made the kaiju very strong. With each strike, it is fortified. So now the information is making its way to Doom. But then things go from bad to worse when the Ancient One says here, and Null's infection has latched onto Asgardian magic. The monster's rage was a feint. We are losing. So yeah, now that Doom knows the truth, he just might be the only person who can save the Marvel Universe. So coming back, this continues with Uatu the Watcher, with him saying here, it is my duty to observe all the moments in this marvelous universe, and I pay keen attention to extinction level events. The Asgardians raised their banners of war against Godzilla's onslaught, but in truth, the gods don't have the greatest record against giant serpent lizards. And I remember some of you guys brought that up, referring to the Midgard serpent in Ragnarok, but Uatu goes on here saying, while Godzilla raged, Null the King in Black infected the World Tree with the Godworm symbiote that has perverted the universe's magic. Symbiotes began growing within the souls of all creatures, even the Ancient One. Most shockingly, out in deep space, the Silver Surfer and Reed Richards fought to keep Galactus from dying. Unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. On Earth, the world's greatest thinkers and philosophers had gathered in the court of Dr. Doom. And now we're not giving any particular names for these individuals. Let me know in the comments who you think we're looking at here. But when they all come to Doom to tell him what they know, and Doom didn't really give them a choice in the matter. But when they tell Doom what they know about Godzilla, a lot of it is what we've seen already throughout the story, because they tell him whatever doesn't kill Godzilla just makes it stronger, and how that's led to mankind making Godzilla very strong over the years. And the suggestion they all brought to Doom was either to turn Godzilla's rage against himself, or to find a way to guide Godzilla to finding peace within. And as we know, that last suggestion sounds a lot like what Reed believes to be the only answer at this point. But after hearing them out, Doom's like, it's been a lively discussion. Doom will make his decision alone. And from there, he dismisses them. But as we know, there's still the whole issue of symbiotes appearing within people now, since Null was able to attach the Godworm to Yggdrasil. But as they leave, one of these guys is like, hey, what about that alien symbiote that's been quote unquote grafted to us? What's the fix for that? And Doom just tells him, Doom is protected by magic, but you are not so lucky. You will be overcome by the symbiote that is growing near your hearts. And that's where the dude's like, man, but you said you'd save us. Only for Doom to tell him no. You heard what you wanted to. What actually passed these lips was, Doom will save the world. So you know, when the world gets saved, some people gonna be here, some people not. You know, it is what it is. And now as Godzilla makes its way back to Earth, Uatu mentions that he's paying more attention to what's going on around Godzilla than what's happening with Doom, with Godzilla making its way back into Earth's solar system, which has seen some changes as of late in this universe that aren't too different from what we've seen just a few years back in the main Marvel universe. Back when a group of Omega-level mutants terraformed an entire planet during Ten of Swords, when Arakko returned, and Magneto was like, we gotta relocate this half of the island to Mars. And it wasn't just him, there was also Storm, Hope, Vulcan, Iceman, Sobenar, and a lot of them show up in this issue, or this universe's version of them. But yeah, the whole thing was crazy. And I got that link in the description for anyone who wants to go back and check it out, which is actually like 2021. Woo, man, it's been a minute. But yeah, with Godzilla heading back to Earth, first he's met by Magneto, who starts this out with a meteor shower and a warning, with him telling Godzilla that it should turn and flee because he does not wish to see it dead. But if it persists, Godzilla will meet its end on planet Arakko. And a lot of what Magneto's doing here is very similar to what we saw in Planet Size X-Men back in 2021. With him controlling meteors that are rich with iron. And now Magneto's attack ends up pulling Godzilla back to Mars, or Arakko, where he's then joined by Storm along with the rest of the Fantastic Four, Sobunar Barako, Cyclops, Jean, and Iceman. And now a lot of these guys were on the fight that took place on the Rainbow Bridge, and because that didn't go so well, they gotta make sure that they stick and move this time around. And as they get started, Storm just takes Ben's catchphrase, cause she's like, it's clobbering time. And I'm just like, hold on, wait a minute. But in Bobby's case, he sees this as an opportunity to really cut loose in a way that he hasn't been able to do on Earth. So he cranks this up to kaiju size so he can throw hands with Godzilla. But even still, Storm tells him like, hey, don't underestimate the beast. Because as we know, Godzilla is stronger than he looks, and his plot armor is impenetrable. And Bobby's able to hang with him for a minute here. At least until Godzilla swings that tail around, which is always really that test to see if someone can really hang or not. And Bobby doesn't pass that test, because this ends up breaking his arm off. And Sue's able to catch some of it to keep it from crushing the others below, while Ben just ends up breaking the rest of it. But even now, Bobby's still in the fight. So going forward, the plan is to have Jean hold Godzilla still long enough for Iceman to freeze him, then they figure out something from there. But when she goes to ask Scott what they should do after that, when he begins to tell her, it's not long before he starts choking on his words and his Godworm symbiote appears. So quickly, Jean heads over to try and help, only for Noel to speak through it and tell her if she removes this symbiote, it'll kill Scott. And then before you know it, Jean starts coughing up hers. And the last thing she's able to get out is if anything happens to him, I will unmake you atom by atom. But yeah, just going off the fact that both Scott and Jean have been taken down by the Godworm, this tells us that not only is it going to be a problem in this fight, but it's also getting closer to Earth. But following this, when we see the others continue to take the fight to Godzilla, next we head over to Sobunar of the Depths, who is also part of the process of terraforming Mars, with him being an Omega level mutant who can literally bleed out oceans of water that contain living ecosystems within them. And I like how when this version of Sobunar gets ready to cut loose, he says, I accept this challenge, because that immediately reminds me of the traditional Arakko fight tournaments that we saw taking place in X-Men Red, or better yet when Uranos attacked, because if I remember correctly, I don't think you can use powers in those tournaments. But anyway, this is a whole different reality, which usually means that none of this will cross over. But nowadays, you can't really guarantee that, so I'm gonna just say for now that's to be determined. But with doing this, Sobunar ends up releasing the fearsome Tritanica, which is like this huge sea monster that's a mixture between like a hammerhead shark and a squid, which is the best way I could think to describe it. But this thing is crazy, and it gives Godzilla a run for his money for a moment, really up until Godzilla charges up that atomic breath, which is also in part powered by the power cosmic, so when he releases, it's a wrap for this one. You know, poor Tritanica didn't have a chance. So next, Storm comes in and she tries to give Godzilla an offer, because she says here, I helped resuscitate this world, and I have an offer. Sleep beneath her oceans. Earth belongs to no one, not even you. Which I think isn't such a bad deal. You know, I don't want to speak for Godzilla or nothing. But before all this popped off, that's basically all Godzilla was doing. And I understand how Godzilla is supposed to keep balance on Earth and stop other monsters from getting out of hand. But I mean, if it comes to that, they could just make a huge gate for Godzilla to walk through and come back from Arakko. But nonetheless, Godzilla's not trying to take this offer. So Bobby tells Storm here that it's no use. Godzilla's never gonna stop. And when Bobby comes back, he's made this quick replacement for his arm, just like this huge spike, which only turns out to work as a huge handlebar for Godzilla to grab onto just before letting Bobby know that he's still got a bit of charge left over. Which takes us back to a Uatu with him saying here, Iceman has reconstructed his body times before, but it would take him weeks to recover from Godzilla's heat breath, which has now just completely broken him down. But when Uatu continues, next he's like, and so the vile infection of Null has come for me too. And that's where we see now that everyone here has been taken over by symbiotes, through Yggdrasil by Null's Godworm. And not just here, but also on Earth, as well as the far reaches of space, where Reed and the Silver Surfer are trying to save Galactus. And Null comes back in here saying, on Earth, in space, and now Arakko, it's finally silent. Sleep. All of you, sleep. You too, Godzilla, you've earned your quiet rest. Sleep, and let sleep take you into a quiet oblivion. Here, in my Garden of Crowns, I can't hear a single voice. It's as quiet as my precious void again, which is what Null's been trying to get this universe back to for so long, though with much more violent methods in the past. But at this time, it doesn't take him long to realize that he's missing somebody, and everybody ain't sleep, because next he's like, hold on, wait a minute, where's Doom? I'm missing a monarch. Then when we head over to Doom, he says here, can you hear me through your symbiotes, Null? Doom has imprisoned the vile sickness you attempted to control me with. Now, I destroy it, as he calls for the flames of Faltine. And now as Doom continues in this undisclosed location, he goes on to say, one symbiote down, several billion to go. And then, I'm saving you for last, Null, you decrepit cosmic vagabond. I'm sorry, Doom, but I'm gonna have to steal that. But he goes on here saying, you claim godhood, and that offends me. And now as Doom enters this cave in this undisclosed location, which is likely the Tibetan Himalayas, he marches through a number of very long stairways with no handrails, which is something only the brave would dare to do. and just about anyone in Star Wars ever. But when he enters his cave, he makes it to a point where he looks up and he says, "Good. It's right where it should be." Because now Doom has made his way to Mechagodzilla. Because now it's his turn. And I can only imagine with the state of this universe, at this very moment, Dr. Doom is still going to find the time to put some Doom drip on Mechagodzilla. Because he can't just ride out there fishbowl with no spinning rims. He's got to do it big for the finale. So coming back, this continues with Doom making his preparations to save the world, now that nearly everyone in this universe has either fallen to Null or Godzilla, with every attack only making the King of Monsters even more powerful for the next fight. So for that reason, Doom has put together a plan that's more complex than just taking on Godzilla one-to-one. And I mean, there is a bit of that, with Doom making his way to go grab Mechagodzilla, and we'll see him put it to use in a little bit. But in the larger picture, Dr. Doom is preparing for so much more, and to pull it off, he's got to move quick. Because as Doom is making his rounds, we see Null make his way to Earth from Asgard, now that his symbiotes have found Doom in Paris. Okay, no, but when Null gets here, he attacks right away, while saying that he's not surprised that Doom was able to hold out for so long, given Doom's reputation. But to Null, none of that matters, because now he finally has him. So he gets his symbiotes, or his disgusting wraiths, to make Doom bow. And you know, I almost feel like that's a subtle nod to Web of Venom Wraith, written by Donny Cates back in 2020, when Cates took the pre-existing history that we got of Wraith from Annihilation Conquest, and he tied that back to Null. And I remember covering this at the time and thinking, man, they're about to bring Wraith to the forefront. But long story short, Wraith was the son of a Kree scientist named Sim Day, who discovered an energy source that could bring light to the galaxy, so he wanted to share it. But of course the Kree, they didn't agree, so they was like, get rid of this man and his whole family, in spite of this power of light being able to push away the darkness that had consumed so many Kree before. But in an attempt to escape, the young Wraith's ship was consumed by the darkness, and his soul was devoured by the Exelon Horde. But even with this lining up perfectly with Wraith and all the others like him, already looking like Null, the parasites from the living abyss, being identified as symbiotes, we could have had something special. But I say all this because at the time when Wraith traced all of this back to Null, Null told him that he didn't do this intentionally, but instead Wraith was made from his trash, while Null was locked away. So now even in this universe with this version of Null, he's disgusted by his creations, and he just might literally be calling them wraiths, but I can't help but to draw the connection. Let me know what you guys think. But in this moment with Null forcing Doom to kneel, Null sees him look up and say, "Doom will now hear your pleas for mercy." So of course Null's like, what is this, a joke? You must feel some pride in being the last man standing. And this is where things take a turn that Null wasn't expecting, because then Doom tells him here, "I am no man," just before catching him with the left. But when Null punches back, he finds out that this was just the Doom bot the whole time. So now he's just like, man, how my raggedy old symbiotes fall for that trick? So he's pissed and he tells his symbiotes to find Victor Von Doom, who Null still sees as just a man, but he also refers to Doom as the most dangerous of these disgusting earthlings, because everything's disgusting. And now after this, we pick up with the real Doom of this earth, in Latveria, where he's freeing one of his people who he needs as a part of his plan. And now this guy, the Latverian baker Kogelmacher, I might be butchering that, but this guy's so ready to help Doom, like he's proud to be a Latverian. So when Doom asks him to join his cause, the baker's like, "Of course, my liege, but why me? What do you require of me?" And Doom's like, "Cakes, I require your finest work." And we'll see what that's all about in just a moment. But before that, we see Doom head over to Madripoor, where he's just freed up Kid Cable, because as part of Doom's plan, he's gonna need the best time traveler. So of course Kid Cable's like, "Look no further, I'm your guy." But while he's here saying things to Doom like, "Hey, I might not look like much, but I got it where it counts," Doom's over here looking at the time almost as if he's waiting on someone. And that's where this bright light flashes behind Nathan, and Doom just looks over at it like, "Hey, you're late," just before Kid Cable is blasted in the back by Kang the Conqueror. Because Doom knew Kang wasn't gonna allow another time traveler to take his spot on the roster. So he basically set up Kid Cable for the okie doke. And I already know all the Kid Cable fans is going crazy, because he got done dirty. But now that Doom has the master time traveler that he wants, he tells Kang to meet him at Doomstat and to stay out of his wine cellar. So that's where Kang is like, "So we're going back in time to before all this Godzilla ballyhoo?" And Doom tells him that's only partially correct, as he warns Kang to avoid being spotted by Null's symbiotes, because Doom has a team to build, which from here takes us to the planet of Rocco, where we recently saw Johnny, Sue, and Ben, along with the X-Men, face Godzilla, where now King Ghidorah is healed up and looking for revenge, and Johnny's one of the only heroes here who are able to free himself up by burning the symbiotes out of himself. And now there's even a moment here where he considers doing the same for the others by trying to burn the symbiotes off of them, but he doesn't do it because the risk of burning his friends and family is too high. So Johnny just holds off on that idea for the time being. Then soon after, he gets a ping from Reed that tells Johnny that he's in Asgard, But as it turns out, it isn't Reed sending his location, but instead, it's Doom, who's now freeing Miles Morales and recruiting him to the team. And now when this happens, Doom tells Miles that he's recruiting him because he remembers the pain of losing what once was. And now that this universe is being threatened with annihilation, they can't fail. So it's like Miles will give his all for this one. But at the same time, I can't help but to imagine it kind of also has something to do with Miles' bioelectricity working well against symbiotes, but Doom doesn't mention that here. And now when Johnny arrives, to his surprise, Reed isn't here. So of course right away he's like, what's going on? And he asks Doom why he's out here faking other people's locations. So Doom lets him know first and foremost to bring you to me, duh. But then also this isn't the time or the place to have this discussion, so they need to leave now. But as it stands, Johnny, he brought Ben and Sue. They're in the ship. And he doesn't want to leave them how they are. And Miles feels the same about everybody else here. Because on one hand, you could look at it like, why not have Doom just free everybody here? Just like he did for Miles and Kid Cable, he's shown that he's capable of freeing them from the symbiotes. But at the same time, Doom also knows that Nola's now aware that they're here. And he doesn't want to get into this prematurely. So he gives them a choice, either stay here, fight, and lose, or come with Doom and defeat Godzilla and Noah once and for all. And Johnny's still torn on the decision because he doesn't want to leave Sue and Ben. But Miles is like, hey man, I don't think we got much of a choice. As he yanks Johnny through the portal and Doom tells them they're heading to Florida, which now has Miles like, man, it's going to be hard to swing around there. And now with Noah still in Paris, he was able to hear through the symbiote vine. Doom mentioned he's heading to the Kingdom of Florida as he was leaving Asgard. And now it takes Noah a moment to realize what's in Florida. Because even now he's like, man, why does that sound so familiar? Like, was it a Nexus something? Nexus mods? Nah, Doom ain't playing no games. Gamers Nexus? Nah, that's games again. Thanks, Steve. But then it eventually dawns on him, and he realizes that Doom is heading for the Nexus of all realities. So right away, Noah tells his symbiotes to get the word to Godzilla and tell him our victory in his slumber is threatened. There is extreme danger to our reign of silence in Florida. So now Godzilla's been provoked to go after Doom. But from here, when we drop down to the Florida Everglades, this is where we find out what Doom needed that baker for. You know, the cargo mocker guy. Still not sure if that's right, sorry. For whatever reason, my brain is stuck on Torbjorn from Overwatch. Please forgive me. I can already see the comments, respect the baker. But nonetheless, when we get here, Johnny's already like, hey, what's with the baker's man? And Miles is just like, oh, thank God you can see him too. I was scared to say anything. I thought maybe one of the symbiotes cut off the blood flow to my brain. But nonetheless, like Doom said, he brought the baker here to bring a cake. And as soon as Johnny and Miles see it, they're like, hold up, that looks good. And Miles like, hell yeah. Did you bring enough for everybody? But as it stands, Doom had this done so he could strike a bargain with Man-Thing. Because Doom needs Man-Thing to chart their course into the multiverse. But it doesn't just stop there. Because Doom says it's not enough to grant us passage into the nexus of realities. We must take the entire doorway with us. And that's where Miles is just like, bruh, where are we going now? So Doom continues here saying, for decades, humankind has pummeled Godzilla, only to see the monster return stronger every time. We find ourselves in need of new weapons. We will take the entire nexus of realities from the Everglades and join it with Doomstat. Then we will brave the multiverse in search of salvation. And now when Doom does this, Godzilla comes beaming in from Asgard. So now Johnny's like, oh, we gotta fight. Vic, we got company. Which of course has the baker like, hey, don't talk to my emperor like that, calling him the V word. But again, Doom knew that Noah was onto him at this point, so he anticipated this attack. So he launches the kaiju countermeasure, which is none other than Mecha Godzilla, who we saw Doom scoop up in the last issue. So we knew Doom was going to use it against Godzilla at some point. But with how this is done, it's more of just a way to buy them some time. Because now that Doom has gathered a number of heroes from across this world to Doomstat to join his team, he tells Godzilla here, the next time you see me, it'll be the day your reign of terror ends. Forever. Just before he gives the baker the cue to give Man-Thing another treat so they can get on with their multiversal travels. Because again, that's basically the arrangement they have here, where in exchange for some cake, Man-Thing will get them where they need to go. And now with them cutting it kind of close here, Miles asks the baker, like, what if Man-Thing doesn't like it? Like, what'll they do then? So the baker tells him, I'm the most talented baker in the world. Dr. Doom has enlisted me to make sure this weird Florida man is plied with treats. And in return, the Florida man will help us traverse the multiverse, ensuring that we can return when we're strong enough to defeat the dual threats that have conquered the Earth. And he's like, now I won't tell you how to spin webs and act creepy. And you leave the baking to me, as they all get out there just in time before getting hit with Godzilla's atomic breath. But even after they leave, Noah's like, okay, we need to be prepared for any and everything, because there's no telling what Doom's gonna come back with. So when Doom returns, Noah's gonna have something for him too. And at Castle Doom, which is now in the nexus of all realities, we start to see that Doom has others here as well, like the Punisher, Ghost Rider Robbie Reyes, and the White Queen Emma Frost. And you can already tell Emma's definitely been in Doom's wine cellar. And now when Doom tells Johnny that he's unsurprised that Johnny's here for the final battle against Godzilla, do keep in mind, prior to this we got a glimpse into the far off future to see this world's version of the year 2099, when we saw Johnny send Herbie back in time to help Reed and the others. But also when we saw this, it let us know how things would have played out, at least up to a certain point, with that certain point being Johnny's death. And there's nothing to say if what Johnny did here caused some sort of ripple effect through time, but I do think it's interesting that Doom singled them out here, now that they're in the nexus of all realities. But it's here where Doom tells Johnny, while talking about the final battle against Godzilla, you both have a world of fire raging within you. And that has Johnny like, wait, so we're going to recruit a Godzilla to fight Godzilla? And Doom just tells him, nah, you think it's too small. One Godzilla will not be enough. You who are assembled, you are the Avengers of Doom, and our world's salvation lies in the multiverse. And now for some reason this kind of reminds me of what we saw with the Doom Above All in Avengers Forever with his multiversal Masters of Evil, though of course it's still not quite the same thing, though it did cross my mind. But yeah, with this Doom assembling his Avengers, this now leads us into the next series, Godzilla Conquers the Multiverse, because in this universe, their Godzilla problem just keeps escalating. So now the multiverse is gonna have to deal with it. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.